How, not if, how will Donald Trump abuse power to keep his office wife, Alina Habba, in that lofty position of acting interim U.S. Attorney for New Jersey? He's not going to take no for an answer. He's already defying 17 different federal judges who got together and decided to vote her out. He's got recess appointments coming up with the Congress in recess. Could he do that? I'm nodding my head. Could he try what he just did in New York, where for a Northern District of New York U.S. Attorney, he just bypassed the entire Senate process, the statutes, and the Constitution and said, I'm going to have my U.S. Attorney appoint the person as a special attorney, whatever that means, indefinitely with the powers of the U.S. Attorney for the district. That's not how that works. Get ready, special interest groups, ACLU, Democracy Forward, Democracy Now, get ready. Start your engines because you'll be filing lawsuits to challenge the improper, invalid, unconstitutional appointment of Alina Habba. My colleagues here on the network, Asha and Renato, get together every week, put their heads together and make it not complicated on a show that's called It's Complicated. They are national security experts. They're former prosecutors, former FBI agents. And they tell it like it is with a point of view you haven't heard anywhere else about Alina Habba and the problem that is Alina Habba. Let's play the clip.
Well, speaking of confusion, Asha, I think of confusion maybe Alina Habba's middle name. And this entire situation surrounding her soon-to-be departure in the, I guess, maybe departure of her first assistant is about as confusing as it gets.
It's super confusing. I was trying to draw a flow chart on exactly what was happening. So
a flow chart. Wow. Okay.
Well, or some kind of diagram, because there's a lot going on. So Habba was acting as an interim U.S. attorney under a statute 28 USC 546.
And can we just, before we go on, I mean, we should just make sure everybody listening to this knows the U.S. attorneys are have to generally be appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, and that's how it's worked for many, 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 many years. And this is unusual that you have an interim U.S. attorney appointed, and not just here, but in many other offices, including Chicago, by the way, across the country.
Right, because that allows them to kind of bypass the confirmation. The flip side is that they are limited in the time that they can stay in the position, which is 120 days. And that's what happened to Habba.
That's right. I mean, the purpose of it, the word interim, is because that's just supposed to be someone to kind of cover a gap until you appoint somebody for real. And Trump has done that in certain circumstances, like where he has a person who he has temporarily. And then I think Jeanine Pirro is one of those, another TV lawyer type who he's putting in DC, who he's appointing permanently. But Habba is, her 120 days are, I believe, up this week.
Right. Now, he has also nominated her officially for the U.S. attorney job.
Yes.
That district.
She has not been confirmed yet. Yes.
Correct. So when her 120 days were up, she was no longer eligible to stay as the interim U.S. attorney. And then this statute, 28 USC 546, allows the court to appoint someone if there's no one else who's been confirmed to that position.
That's right. And that's not, it's an unusual, it's an unusual law that allows the court to do that. And it's really, I believe, it's been, and this is under the same code section, 28 USC 546. It's an unusual provision because usually the judges aren't picking executive branch officials. It was really meant for, I believe, during the U.S. attorney's firing scandal during Bush, is when this got resurrected. But the bottom line is that, this is another provision that is usually used when there's a gap I mean, it's been in my personal experience times where a first assistant, who in other words, the number 2 person at the U.S. Attorney's Office, is filling in as an acting U.S. attorney for some period of time, but they can only do that for so many days. And the judges will come forward and they'll basically just usually rubber stamp the same person for a longer period of time.
Well, in this case, the court appointed the first assistant. Grace.
Correct. Now, but not Ms. Habba, who
Not Ms.
Trump
Habba.
wants.
No. And then Bondi fired her.
And not just fired her from being the interim U.S. attorney or, judicially appointed U.S. attorney, but like fired her from the United States Department of Justice because she was appointed by the court to essentially be a judicially appointed U.S. attorney, who, by the way, can serve until the vacancy is actually filled through the Senate.
Right. So technically, Bondi fired her in her capacity as the first assistant because legally she is not able to fire her as the interim U.S. attorney because, as you pointed out, she was appointed by a court for that. It's a title issue, but but Trump, by the way, could have fired her directly, and this came up in his first administration with the whole Jeff Berman in Southern District of New York. We don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but basically, he was the acting U.S. attorney, I guess, for the
Southern District of New York. Mm-hmm. And he was appointed by appointed by the judges as well.
He was put there by the bench, and Barr issued a letter like out of the blue saying he was fired. He refused to go because he was like, "You can't fire me." And then finally, Barr said, "Well, Trump has given the order for you to be fired." Anyway, he finally left after his first assistant was put in charge, I believe. But that was a whole fiasco that kind of brought all this up.
Now, I will just say he stepped down once he realized that like his first assistant, who he respected and thought would be independent and would not quash investigations of Trump's allies and so forth, would be in charge. But that has not been judicially tested. In other words, the Office of Legal Counsel, which is the part of the Justice Department that usually sort of determines, answers these tricky legal questions for the president and the White House, determined during Trump's first term that he could do this, but that it's not clear how a court, like how the Southern District of New York or the Second Circuit or the United States Supreme Court would view that issue. But it's an interesting one because there's something problematic about this law, which was originally enacted, I think, in the 60s and then got resurrected in 2006, that we've been referring to, 28 USC 546, in which you have judges who are Article 3 appointees in a Constitution exercising what would ordinarily be an Article 2 power of appointing an executive branch employee.
Yeah, and this Supreme Court in particular isn't too, the hiring and firing piece is really core to their idea of the unitary executive. And so you can imagine that they would not be happy, would not find this to be consistent with their idea of separation of powers. And so, it's interesting whether this is all a setup to kind of get that issue there as well, so that they, because I guess if you can't have a court appoint someone after the 120 days is up, I mean, I wonder if you would then even, if the executive branch would make a claim that the 120-day limit is somehow, beyond Congress's power or something like that. I mean, we're seeing across the board that the executive branch is trying to use this power to hire and fire to essentially reshape the government in a way that evades all kinds of accountability, including from Congress and from the courts.
Well, what's interesting here, Asha, too, is, here, this is really Trump using statutes and abusing statutes that were meant to be for filling temporary vacancies, just like he used to do with using the Vacancies Act to have all these acting, he would have all these acting department heads, right? Acting cabinet members. Here he's got interim U.S. attorneys across the country. And he's basically doing that to bypass the United States Senate, controlled by Republicans, but with enough of a thin margin that somebody like Alina Habba, who I think it's fair to say is patently unqualified for the role, having never been involved in criminal law other than Trump's cases, as far as I can tell. And so certainly doesn't have the experience necessary to be the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey. So a very substantial large U.S. Attorney's office. In any event, this really puts Trump right now in a pickle. It's not clear what he's going to do. I mean, he hasn't tried. Bondi's fired the first assistant. Grace. And her role, as you said, is Attorney General, firing her from the Justice Department. But it's not clear whether she can fire Grace from the role that the judges have appointed to her as U.S. Attorney, where she would serve until Habba is confirmed or not confirmed. Somebody else is confirmed. And if Trump tries to fire her, that could get litigated out potentially, and there could be a court battle over that. And then the question is what happens next. And I think a former classmate of ours, Ann Joseph O'Connell, suggested that perhaps Trump could go back to the same statute and appoint Habba again for another 120 days over and over again.
Except she says you can't do that if she's also the nominee.
Yeah. And so that's a problem, that maybe they'll find somebody else in New Jersey who Trump can appoint in the meantime. I
know people's eyes are glazing over, but I think this underscores the kind of gymnastics that this administration is engaging in order to be able to put people in these very important positions that are going to do his bidding, and that he can bypass any kind of, real vetting or accountability or oversight that the Constitution contemplates. That's what people need to understand. All this statutory, the flow chart and the, choose your own adventure piece of who ends up in this role aside, which people are not expected to follow. It's already confusing for us. But really the point is that he is, he did this in his first term. He was using the Vacancies Act a lot, but it's now in turbocharge where, it's whether it's in the hiring and firing, or we've talked about it with it's using these gray areas and loopholes in statutes to basically accumulate power and to evade any kind of oversight and accountability. And unfortunately, the only answer to that is for Congress to go back and close those loopholes and clarify those gray areas. And that's not going to happen anytime soon.
No, absolutely not. And it's really amazing, Asha, particularly given that the Republicans have a significant majority in the Senate. I think it's 53-47. It's not like it's a one vote majority or they need to trot out J.D. Vance in a 50-50 vote. They have the votes. If Alina Habba is qualified, all he really needs to do, Trump does, is he needs to find a qualified person in New Jersey that he could nominate, who could get confirmed into this role. But he's not willing to do that. Alina Habba is totally unqualified and is basically a personal attorney of his who does civil matters, not a particularly accomplished attorney. And he's putting her in this role for personal loyalty, perhaps because Trump has substantial properties in New Jersey and spends a lot of time there.
Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. The whole thing is depressing. Dean Piro, what are we even doing here?
Well, we're surviving. And hopefully the Republic survives as well.
Welcome back. You're on the Legal AF YouTube channel. 12 new videos every day at the intersection of law and politics, and amazing original content like the podcast It's Complicated by Asha and Renato. You're going to want to be there and listen to them every week. Subscribe, hit the reminders. You'll be reminded when they post. And they also, of course, are over on the audio feed, audio podcast. You can find It's Complicated. Download them there as well. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. I'm Michael Popak, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popak Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popak Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popak Firm today at 1-877-POPAK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopakfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popak Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.